Welcome to This Explainer. We're jumping straight into a forensic autopsy of one of history's most bizarre and, frankly, gruesome political downfalls. We are looking at the year 1672 in the Dutch Republic, when the citizens literally turned on their leader, murdered him, and, well, ate him. We really need to unpack the exact causes that led to this man being eaten. Because that's the ultimate question, isn't it? How does a civilized, incredibly prosperous nation end up doing something so unbelievably savage? We're going to start right at that macabre climax and work our way backward. We're going to uncover the precise political, military, and psychological triggers that caused this event. Because, a society doesn't just wake up one day and decide to do this. Alexander Dumas actually captured the utter savagery of this moment brilliantly in his writing. He described how the mob, after mangling and completely stripping Johan de Witt and his brother Cornelis, went around selling small slices of their bodies for 10 sous apiece. Just absolute madness. Johan was essentially the Dutch prime minister. To understand the insanity that causes a society to do this, we have to look at the very foundation he built. Section 1. The Golden Setup. 20 years of unprecedented prosperity. We have to rewind a bit here because Johan de Witt wasn't some hated tyrant. As Grand Pensionary from 1653 to 1672, he was basically running the country. And the guy was brilliant. A true mathematical genius, actually. He used probability and advanced finance to wipe out the national debt. Under his watch, the Dutch Republic navigated its golden age of global trade. They were swimming in wealth, absolutely dominating global trading networks. Section 2. Factions and Fatal Flaws. A Republic Divided. But here's the thing. Beneath all that money and success, massive domestic cracks were forming. The public was completely polarized into two fiercely opposing camps. It's your classic political tug-of-war. You had De Witt's States Party, wealthy merchants who wanted a strict republic and absolute free trade. And then you had the Orangists, mostly working-class artisans who fiercely supported Prince William III of Orange and wanted a monarchy. This intense division is the first major cause of the tragedy. And De Witt, he kind of poured gasoline right on this fire. He was so anti-monarchy that he actively pushed to abolish the office of stadtholder. Now, the stadtholder was this traditional quasi-monarchical leadership role held by the House of Orange. De Witt called his system the true freedom. But by legally blocking Prince William from taking power, De Witt profoundly infuriated the Orangist faction. He was creating fierce, deeply resentful enemies right in his own backyard. Which brings us to a massive military blind spot. So, imagine you're a global superpower. Why would you build an invincible navy but completely ignore your land army? It makes absolutely no sense, right? Well, De Witt poured massive funds into a world-class fleet to protect all those lucrative trade routes, but he left the land borders incredibly vulnerable. The army was practically abandoned. This fatal strategic oversight is the direct military cause of his downfall. Section 3. The Disaster Year. Rampjaar 1672. Okay, so here is the massive geopolitical cause that finally ignited the powder keg. All that Dutch wealth created a lot of envy in Europe. In 1672, they get hit with a highly coordinated multi-front invasion. King Louis XIV of France attacks from the south, England blockades them from the sea, and the German bishops of Münster and Cologne push in from the east. Because of that neglected army we just talked about, the Dutch land defense simply collapsed. Out of sheer desperation, the government authorizes the water lien. The Dutch actually had to deliberately open their dikes and drown their own agricultural lands just to slow the French advance. It was a chaotic, totally last-ditch effort. And the crazy thing? It didn't even stop the enemy. It just succeeded in absolutely terrifying the local population, causing mass panic, hunger, and looting. There's a famous saying from that year. The people were irrational, the government helpless, and the country beyond salvation. And that perfectly captures the profound psychological cause of this entire tragedy. When a population faces total annihilation, existential panic sets in, and a terrified society desperately needs a scapegoat. The panicked public and the Orangist faction pointed their fingers directly at the guy who had been in charge for 20 years, Johan de Witt. Section 4. Anatomy of a Mob. The pressure cooker explodes. Now let's track the terrifyingly rapid unraveling of society as political operatives weaponized all this public panic. Look how fast this happens. In just a matter of weeks, 20 years of stability collapses. June 21st, there's an assassination attempt on De Witt. By July 4th, his enemies capitalize on the chaos and appoint William III as stadtholder. Seeing the writing on the wall, Johan resigns on August 4th. But for his political enemies, resignation just wasn't enough. This is where the trap finally snaps shut. Johan's brother, Cornelis, had been arrested on totally bogus treason charges. He was brutally tortured but refused to confess, so they sentenced him to exile. On August 20th, Johan walks just a few steps from his home to the prison to escort his brother out of the city. He walks directly into a fatal ambush. A civic militia, fully incited by Orangist propaganda, has the prison surrounded. And here we reach the horrifying culmination of all these causes: the stress of the invading army, the intense political polarization, the coordinated propaganda. It all drives the mob to absolute madness. Societal norms just disintegrate. They drag the brothers out, shoot them, and beat them to death. And then, in a moment of sheer cannibalistic savagery, they cut out the brothers' livers, roast them, and eat them. 10 sous. That was the going rate. That is the exact price chunks of the former prime minister's flesh were sold for on the streets of The Hague after the massacre. It's a staggering detail, isn't it? It shows just how thoroughly de Witt had been stripped of his humanity in the eyes of the public. He wasn't a human being or a leader anymore. He was just a literal commodity for their rage. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like some crazy urban legend, but I assure you, it is absolutely real. The Haag's Historisch Museum in the Netherlands currently houses Johan's preserved tongue and Cornelius's finger. They were kept as gruesome souvenirs by the mob and eventually passed down until they ended up in a museum. They serve as this dark, physical reminder of the specific historical causes we've been mapping out in this explainer. So what's the big takeaway here? It's a terrifying, timeless lesson. When you mix deep political polarization with a sudden existential panic for survival, the pressure cooker explodes. The Dutch Golden Age was a pinnacle of culture and wealth, and yet it only took one disastrous year for its citizens to regress to literally eating their own prime minister. It really leaves us to wonder just how fragile the rules of our own civilization really are. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you found this breakdown as fascinating as I did.